know there are 52 people in this audience tonight.
We don't know yet. You'll still be here at the end.
We know that roughly 41 people of you have booked in advance.
Around 13 if you just bought tickets on the door.
We know the room we're standing in is 11 metres wide, 5 metres long, between 7 and 8 metres high.
We know the seats are purple.
We know the seats are uncomfortable.
We know that some parts of the dressing room haven't been cleaned for a very long time.
We know that there are 17 of us on stage.
We know that if you add all of our ages together, it makes the number greater than 150.
But smaller than 300.
We don't know your ages.
We know that later, when the lights on the stage fade, there'll be a clicking sound from up there above, as the metal on the lanterns start to cool.
We know that on the back of the seats, D19 or D20, someone scratched something with a penknife maybe, or a pen that's not working.
Or with a piece of glass.
Not writing, just a few horizontal lines.
We know that near the back of the room there are some inexplicable marks on the floor.
We don't know how they got there. We don't know how they got there.
We don't know the right word for the colours of the walls. We know that the temperature on stage is now 20 degrees.
We know that the windows are closed.
We know that the air conditioning is on.
We know that later, if we're all trapped in here,
With the doors and windows completely sealed.
There'd only be enough oxygen to last a group of people this size.
For 2.5 days.
We know that none of us suffers from claustrophobia. We know that none of us is particularly frightened of the dark.
We know that 2 of us are frightened of spiders!
But one is frightened of doors.
That another of us is scared of moths. And snakes!
That 4 are frightened of heights.
That several faint or go crazy at the sight of blood.
That 6 are uneasy with silence.
That 4
That 2 are frightened of shadows.
That 3 are uneasy with flying.
We know the difference between being frightened and uneasy.
We know our own names.
We know each other's names.
We know each other's nicknames, past and present.
And in some cases we know your names. Rachel and Darren are here, Ginny's parents.
so we're a small group of Ollie's relatives, including his sister Charlotte.
Connor, Charlotte's boyfriend.
Owen, Liam's younger brother.
Other people's names we know from the box office.
Wendy and Mr. Scanlon.
Then?
We know which of us has brothers and sisters.
We know which of us has living parents.
We know our own grandparents.
In the sense of living or dead.
But we're hazy about the grandparents of others in the group.
But hazy about other relations, such as cousins, aunts, uncles.
We know that one of us has a twin.
We know which of us has boyfriends and girlfriends.
Except in a few cases where there's ambiguity.
Or some kind of secrecy.
We know which of us identifies as gay.
Except in a few cases where there is ambiguousness. Or some kind of secrecy.
We know which of us eats meat.
Which of us is vegetarian?
Which is a smoker?
Which of us drinks or takes drugs?
Which of us is promiscuous.
Which of us listens to that kind of music?
Which of us is into politics?
Which of us reads or plays sports or is into games or...
We don't know what the future will bring.
We don't know which of us will get married.
Which of us will stay single?
Which of us will divorce?
We don't know which of us will find out only later, or only later come to terms with the fact that they're actually gay.
We don't know which of us are going to stay here in England or which of us are going to move away.
We don't know which of us will have kids.
We don't know which of us will be happy.
We don't know which of us will live life as a tragedy.
We don't know which of us will sell his soul or her soul to the devil.
We don't know which of us will work in an investment bank.
Or which of us will earn money taking clothes off or waiting tables.
Or which of us will end up sleeping in a doorway? Or sleeping on the beach?
We don't know which of us is going to be rich.
Or which of us might end up being poor?
Though we can take an educated guess.
We don't know which of us is going to have a lot of difficulty stealing through illnesses or accidents.
Or which one of us will have good luck?
Or which have bad luck.
Or which one of us will have good luck disguised as bad luck?
We don't know which of us will fall on ice.
Or get hands caught in the machinery?
We don't know which of us have big car crashes.
Or even small car crashes?
We don't know which of us have red skin rashes.
Or become addicts to something?
Which of us might win money in the lottery.
Or which of us might discover something?
A new planet!
A new dimension? A new way of making computer chips? A new branch of mathematics?
We don't know which one of us are going to die first.
We don't know which of us will still be alive in 10 years' time.
Or 10 minutes' time.
Or in 20 years' time?
Or in 50 years' time. We know that Taz has a motorbike. We know which of us has a good sense of humour.
We know that Callum has an old Nokia phone.
We know which of us laughs the easiest.
Which of us argues the hardest.
We know that people who stop you in town asking for change for their train fare are probably lying.
We know that anything an automated phone system says.
That you are 73rd in the queue.
And that
Your call is important.
is also kind of a lie.
We know that politicians lie.
We know how things work.
We know what people tell us.
We know what time it is.
We know that Danushka and Tino are friends.
We know that Tino and Ginny are neighbours.
We know that it's not a good idea to hang around at the railway station late at night.
We know that in many cities, the rich people live on the hills or facing the sea.
And that the poor people live in the valleys.
We know that in many cities, the traffic chokes the centre.
Polluting the air.
Making it hard for cyclists and pedestrians.
Making it hard to breathe, especially in the summer.
We know that alcohol leads some funny things happening. We know that assumptions lead to crisis. We know that sun sets in the west.
Rises in the east.
We know that none of us have been to America.
We know that none of us have been to Hong Kong.
We know that none of us have ever been refused entrance to a country based on a criminal record or visa irregularities.
We know that one of us has had regular dealings with the police.
We know that some of us have had friction with particular neighbours.
Or with people living in the same building or street.
Or have had trouble with various local shopkeepers.
We know that 2 of us have been excluded from school at one time or another.
We don't know so much about you.
We don't know who you are.
Where you came from.
Or why.
We don't know if you can be trusted.
For the most part, we don't know if you came here by chance, or if you planned this for a very long time.
We don't know if you've come from far away or nearby.
We don't know if you're drifters.
Or loners.
Or travellers.
We don't know if you're hard workers or lazy fools.
We don't know if you're bus drivers,
Comedians.
Office workers.
Teachers.
We don't know if you pay your taxes.
Or if you cheat your taxes.
We don't know if you're racist.
Or if you're kind people.
Or if you're murderers.
Or if you play football on the weekends.
If you like to cook.
Or work in the garden.
we have no clue.
We don't know a thing.
We don't know if you're superstitious, if you go to church, if you keep your fingers crossed behind your backs and making promises, or if you're into witchcraft.
We don't know if any of you has a criminal record.
We're not sure if any of you are under investigation by the police.
Or if any of you are actually members of the police.
We don't know if you're undercover police following people in the audience.
Or if you're undercover police following one of us as part of your investigation.
But we do think that's pretty unlikely.
We know you are here. We know that you're watching.
We know what's happening in this room.
We don't know what's happening in
We're
this room.
pretty sure we know what's happening in this room.
We don't know what's happening in this room.
We're not completely sure what is happening.
We have no idea at all what is happening.
We are confident we know what is happening.
We don't know what is happening in this room.
We're pretty sure we know what's happening. We can feel your attention.
And your inattention.
We know that you're looking with your eyes.
We know that the light from the scene enters the eye through the pupil.
The size of the pupil changes depending on how bright the light is.
Opening and closing like a shutter.
The lens focuses light from the scene onto the back of the eye.
The retina.
The retina is a mass of light-sensitive neurons called photoreceptors. These change light signals into electrical ones.
We know that these signals are processed by the brain.
We know that if you look really deeply into someone's eyes, you can't tell what they're thinking.
We know if you look really deeply into someone's eyes, you can tell.
We know if you look into someone's eyes, you can't tell what they're thinking.
We know that sometimes, on specific occasions, if you look really deeply into someone's eyes, you can tell what they are thinking.
We know if you look into someone's eyes, you can't tell what they're thinking.
We know, on specific occasions, only sometimes, if you look really deeply into someone's eyes, you can get an impression that you know what they're thinking.
We know that sometimes on specific occasions, if you look really deeply into someone's eyes, you can persuade yourself you know what they're thinking.
We know that if you look into someone's eyes, you can't tell what they're thinking.
We know that if you look really deeply into someone's eyes, you can take a guess as to what they're thinking.
We know that if you look into someone's eyes, you can't tell a thing about what they're thinking.
If you cough, we hear it.
If you laugh, we hear that too.
Any movements we also hear.
Except very small ones, of course.
Or very slow ones.
The tiny movement of your eyelashes.
Or the steady movement of your breathing.
We know that silence and stillness are a sign of concentration.
We know that you're listening.
We know that sound travels more slowly than light.
We know that sound waves are produced when the air is moving.
When the air is mechanically disturbed.
We know that sound draws the human eye,
taking it from one place
to another.
We know that sound waves enter the human ear through the ear canal, making the eardrum vibrate. Vibrations pass through a set of bones in the middle ear and moving the fluid then to the hair-like sound cells and vibration into nerve impulses. These nerve impulses are processed by the brain through the auditory nerve, where this information is converted to what we think we can hear into what we understand as sound.
You could most likely hear us speaking that way. Or perhaps you could just see our lips moving and make out what we're saying by the movement of our mouths.
We know that most vocal sounds are created from the lungs, through the mouth or nose. We use this stream of air to form specific sounds by changing the shape of our mouths.
We know that typically people think a little before they speak. People don't start talking for no reason, without thinking. They spend time considering thoughts or feelings they might want to convey. After this interior initial time of processing comes the task of word finding, of which they choose the right words to articulate all these things they are feeling.
We don't know what you're thinking, though. You could be concentrating, or daydreaming, or thinking about what's happening.
Or drifting off. We know that the warm and dark of the theatre can make it tempting to sleep, to fall back, and let the darkness fold around you.
We know you're out there.
Watch it.
The neurons in your retinas turn what you see into electrical impulses to be processed by the brain. We know that you're in front of them.
What's happening behind us? You can't be so sure.
Technically, someone could cross the stage behind us, slowly, quietly, and we wouldn't be aware of it.
Unless we set up a camera.
Or unless we turn around.
What's happening backstage is also completely out of our grasp. We can't know about it unless someone yells, maybe, or coughs, or someone drops something heavy.
Or unless someone breaks something noisily, glass or crockery, a mirror, something metal.
We don't know what's happening in the foyer right now either.
Or under the stage.
And we don't know what's happening in South Africa.
Or in the car park.
Or in Paris.
Or on the other side of the street.
Or on the other side of the city.
Or on Mount Everest.
We don't know what's happening in Glasgow. Or in Porto. Or in the toilets downstairs. Or in Leicester.
Or under the seats at the back now.
Or under the stage.
Or in Shanghai.
Or in Bosnia.
Or on the mountains of the moon.
Or in Pharaoh. Or in Kinshasa.
Or at the bottom of the ocean.
We don't know what's happening on the International Space Station.
We don't know anything about the International Space Station.
We know that the International Space Station is the largest artificial body in Earth's orbit, and from here, from the Earth, it can be seen with the naked eye.
The ISS is the size of a football field.
An American football field.
It weighs the same as 330 cars.
We're not sure what kind of cars.
We know it's up there.
But we don't know what's happening.
We don't know anything at all about the International Space Station.
We know that the ISS consists of pressurized modules, trusses and large solar panels, maintaining an orbital altitude of 380 kilometers and completing 15.5 Earth orbits a day. We also know that it's been up there for 196 months since October 2000, continuously occupied for 16 years, 3 months and 16 days, representing the longest continuous human presence in space.
You can see it with the naked eye. We don't know what it would be like to be up there. We don't know what it would be like to spend a 6-month expedition up there with 4 to 6 other people.
We don't know what prison would be like.
Or solitary confinement.
We We know a bit about the passage of time. We don't know so much about the passage of time.
We know a bit about spending time with other people.
We don't know so much about spending time with other people.
We know time with family and such like.
Or time at school.
We know a lot about our own time.
We know a lot about time with each other.
About time talking, or time fooling around, or time sleeping.
You know, time seems to go slowly sometimes.
And sometimes goes faster. It goes slow when waiting for news, or when waiting for people to arrive.
Faster during periods of excitement.
And slower during boring events.
We know that the human sense of time is completely linked to the movement of the Earth. Its axis, which produces day and night, its rotation around the Earth, which takes a whole year to complete.
We know that the human heart beats faster when a person is excited.
That physical exercise, sleep, anxiety, stress, illness, food and drugs all change the human heartbeat.
We know that the average human heartbeat is 60 to 100 beats per minute. We know that this performance lasts around 3,375 heartbeats, around 45 minutes in clock time.
Unless something goes wrong, in which case the performance can be longer or shorter.
For example, the duration changes if someone says something they're not supposed to say.
Or if someone jumps ahead of you. Or if someone skips everything and jumps to the end.
Or if someone looks backwards in the text and something that should only be said once gets repeated, perhaps a number of times.
We know that sometimes the rehearsals we have, we can get stuck in a loop.
We know that in those loops, it can be a little while before anyone realises what is actually happening. We know that the loops happen when a sentence doesn't go to a new place.
But instead takes us back to a place we've already been.
We know that in these loops, time seems to go slowly.
Time seems to go faster.
We know that this performance lasts around 45 minutes.
Unless something goes wrong.
For example, if someone says something they aren't actually supposed to say.
Or if something that should be said gets repeated.
We know in the rehearsals we have, we can get stuck in a loop.
We know that in loops, it can be a little while before anyone notices. But eventually, usually, someone does. We know that right about now is probably the hardest part of the performance. I mean, you know the parameters, the rules, the possibilities. The stall of it all laid out. It's clear what we can do, what we can stretch to, the topics we can reach to, without breaking our own rules. But, at the same time, you can see that our capacity to generate a surprise is slowly getting reduced. And we're not pulling rabbits out of hats anymore, but rather walking the borders of a space that has its own limits.
We know that Leah's favourite TV show is Silent Witness.
We know that Cousin's favourite game is Mario Kart.
We know that Jack's the best football player here.
We know that Liam can only play 3 songs on the guitar.
We know that Ollie's favourite book is Harry Potter.
We know that Louis can dance.
We know
it's never really dark. That's because the curtains are thin and there is a street lamp right outside.
We know that Julie sometimes sneaks boys up his room so they can fool around. We know that Taz claims never to have had sex.
We know that Heather shares a bedroom with her sister.
That Liam shared a bedroom with his brother.
That Jack made marks on the bathroom wall.
We know that Mel will be a good person to ask about the things that go missing in the kitchen in the house where she lives.
We know that there are some private things, a diary and so on, hidden in the cupboard of Leah's sister's bedroom.
We know that the most used number in Lydia's phone is 07568 165 860.
But most of us don't know whose number that actually is.
We know that if all of you are sitting in the right seats, you're closer to each other than we are.
We know that the distance between us here on stage is about 2 metres. And up there, where you are, with all the seats occupied, you're more or less sitting shoulder to shoulder.
But from where you are sitting to where we are standing is more or less 3.5 metres.
From our feet to the back of the room, it's 2 metres.
We know that the fastest sprinter in the world could cover that distance in 0.2 seconds.
A spider is going to work from here to that wall in about 10 minutes.
We know that there are 17 of us.
And more or less 52 of you.
We know that the world's population is 7.125 billion.
And that the world's landmass is just under 150,000 million square kilometres.
From these facts, we can figure out that if all land space were divided equally, there'd be around 21,000 square metres per person.
But we know that space on Earth is not divided in space.
It's more unequal.
Some people have a lot of space.
And others have none.
Some people have all the money.
And others have none.
We know that although people criticise inequality, this doesn't really lead to change.
We know what people say isn't always reflected in what they do.
That some people's actions don't always match their principles.
We know that the smooth running of the world depends on this fact, having not been made too explicit. We know that true things should not be said too often or too forcefully.
We know that some people get off hurting others.
By exerting power over them,
Directly.
or indirectly.
We know that some people are arseholes and idiots. We know that some people are selfish, that some people are big mouths. We know sometimes in the early morning it's hard to get taxis.
We know that you can't trust boys.
We know that we can't trust girls.
We know that you can't trust girls or boys.
We think that we can trust you.
We know we can't trust you.
We're pretty sure we can trust you.
We know that sitting there in the dark, as we're speaking, where your eyes and your attention wander.
You don't know if you're really paying attention or just pretending to focus on the stage while really thinking about other things.
Or if you're daydreaming.
Or drifting off.
We don't know if you're paying attention.
We know that things that seem like a bad idea when you're sober can start to seem like a great idea when you've been drinking.
We know that some people cling to facts because questions are too much to bear. We know that snow and rain fall downward.
At least as long as there was no wind.
We know that the Second World War is over.
We know that the Trojan War is over. We know that the Cold War has more or less started again.
There's a war of words that's been going on for a long time.
We know that the steam engine is obsolete.
We know that skin burns if exposed to too much sunlight.
Or too much radiation.
We know that if you eat too much, you get sick.
Or fat.
We know in darkness you can't see anything.
We know that items deleted on a computer are really actually deleted.
We know that some people cope better than others with stress.
We know that this morning that the pound has slipped against the dollar.
The FTSE index slipped a little too. The euro stayed stable.
That shares in Xerox took a tumble.
We know that shares in Apple took a small fall of 0.3 cents on the stock.
But there was a rise in the price of oil.
And a rise in the price of grain!
We don't know how the stock exchange is moving right now.
We know that most damage from a nuclear weapon comes from the explosive blast. A shockwave of air radiates outward from the explosion, causing a sudden change in air pressure, which can crush objects, and high winds that can knock things down.
Large buildings are destroyed by the sudden change in air pressure, while objects and people, such as trees and telegraph poles, are destroyed by the wind. The size of the bomb blast is related to the height at which the burst takes place above ground level.
We know that bombs make a sound!
We know that bombs make a terrible sound. We don't know much.
We know plenty.
We don't know anything.
We don't know much. We know plenty.
We don't know anything.
We don't know much.
We don't know anything. We know what happens, but we don't always know why. We know that some people get closer.
Or further away. That bodies change.
That memories fade.
That economies rise and fall.
That colours fade.
That muscles waste. That cities change.
That eyesight blurs.
That stone turns to dust.
That skin loosens.
That light fades. That uncertainty
Once present.
rapidly multiplies.
We know in 85 years' time, all of us here,
The people on stage will be dead.
And we know that all of you,
Very likely.
All of you will be dead before we are.
In any case, in 80 years or so,
On the outside,
you'll all be dead.
we know that people get very nervous if the talk is too much of death.
they get a bit nervous.
We know that people also get nervous when there's too much talk about illness. For similar reasons, for obvious reasons.
People get a bit nervous if someone's waving a gun around too.
They get a bit nervous if there's too much talk about love, but for different reasons.
Or if there's too much talk about sex.
About penetration.
And pleasure.
Or orgasm.
Things that breach the border of person cause this nervousness. Things that might be called improprieties, especially in public and without the cover of character.
we know that some people get a bit nervous when there is too much talk about race,
Or about politics.
or even money.
We know that people don't want to hear long descriptions of global warming and the effect that it's having.
Or long descriptions of a YouTube in which someone gets killed. Or long arguments about who has money and who has none.
We know that the topic of conversation is the traffic yesterday, and the sunlight the day before. The food. And plans for the summer.
We know that in some circumstances, a difficult conversation is followed by this kind of awkward silence.
Like in a movie where they make the tap tick or clock tick sound very, very loud.
Or when silence seems very nervous. Like time itself is scratching the skin, awkward and uneasy. Or else time seems slow and echoing. Each second, a big, sharp sound.
We know that humans and animals are different.
Dolphins are intelligent, bees are collected, and rats are resourceful.
We know that dogs are loyal. And that cats have personality. But foxes kill sometimes for reasons other than hunger.
We know that spiders cannot swim.
We know that some birds travel tens of thousands of kilometres, working from a radar in relation to the Earth's magnetic field, using their knowledge of stars to navigate through some unknown system.
We know that some people are better at reading maps than others.
That some people can't find themselves on mobile GPS. We know that the behaviour of animals can be changed or conditioned using the consistent application of particular systems of reward or punishment. Rats placed in a closed box, sometimes called a Skinner box or operant conditioning chamber, easily learn that pressing a particular lever is linked to the arrival of food or the cessation of an unpleasant electrical current. We know that there is no real difference between the learning that takes place in humans and that which takes place in other animals. B.F. Skinner proposed that humans learn behaviour much in the same way that animals learn to press a lever. Skinner believed that human free will was actually an illusion, maintaining the fact that actions are best understood as a result of their consequences. If the consequences of an action are bad, there's a good chance it won't be repeated. If the consequences of an action are good, however, the actions that led to it are more likely to be returned to in future. Skinner called this the principle of reinforcement.
We know time passes.
That time is passing.
That things are changing.
We know that things are closing down.
We know that above and below us is a certain amount of room. From the tops of our heads to the ceiling is about 8 meters. From our feet here to the ground below should be about 4. If we were to start digging straight down using picks and spades, we'd have to go around 6,371 kilometres down before reaching the centre of the earth.
Assuming we all work together, digging on average 2 metres per day, depending on what kind of ground we encountered, it would take us 872 years before reaching the central core.
But of course, while this is all true, we know we'd all be long dead from old age and exhaustion before then.
We know time passes.
But time is passing.
That time has probably passed.
That language is a trap.
And a way out of a trap.
That language is both a trap and a way out of the trap.
It's a tool to change it.
We know that Louis here believes in ghosts.
We know that the world would be a completely different place if circumstances were to change. If the dinosaurs were still living, if the water levels rise.
Or if Hitler had never been born. If the Chinese Emperor Luzon had died young. If the Palestinians had reached the moon first. If Christopher Columbus had never discovered America. If World War I had never happened. If Nelson Mandela had never been free.
We know that Leo saw a ghost in the corner of the room once. A figure just standing there watching.
We know that Michaela had the recurring dream of falling.
That Leighton has a dream that's only sound! We know you're watching. Waiting.
We know strong electromagnetic currents can cause hallucinations.
We know that internet data is under heavy surveillance.
We know that chromosomes are made up of DNA and that genes are small parts of DNA.
We know that DNA is very long and complex, and that these molecules carry a code that determine any characteristics of any living thing.
We know that other than identical twins, each person's DNA is unique.
We know that sometimes people get a feeling that something's wrong. A feeling not linked to a concrete event.
And sometimes people think differently, that everything is going to be okay.
We know that none of these feelings can be trusted.
We know that some people are optimists and pessimists.
We know that things change.
We know that things stay the same.
We know that time passes.
That time is passing.
That time has certainly passed. We know that people get a funny feeling sometimes.
Not linked to a concrete event.
We know that some people feel sure of themselves.
That some people know how to listen.
That some people watch carefully.
That some people close their eyes to concentrate. That some people make wishes in the dark.
That some people get the feeling that time is shifting.
That some people get a feeling that time is slowing.
That some people change.
That everyone changes.
That people change all the time.
That time has passed.
Time has moved on.
That people change.
That people are changed.